USA's latest move has sent shockwaves far beyond its borders, leaving governments, markets, and ordinary people around the world struggling to understand what comes next. It did not arrive wrapped in dramatic speeches or weeks of public debate. Instead, it emerged with a suddenness that caught even seasoned analysts off guard. One moment, the global system seemed to be following a familiar, if uneasy, rhythm. The next, that rhythm was broken, replaced by a tense pause in which everyone realized that the rules might be changing. What makes this moment so unsettling is not just the action itself, but the timing. The world is already balancing on a fragile edge shaped by economic uncertainty, regional conflicts, technological disruption, and political polarization. In such an environment, even a modest shift by the United States carries enormous weight. When the move is unexpected, decisive, and far-reaching, its impact multiplies almost instantly. Across Washington, officials are careful with their words. Statements are precise, measured, and often intentionally vague. This alone has fueled speculation. Allies are reading between the lines, trying to determine whether this move signals a temporary adjustment or a long-term strategic pivot. Rivals are doing the same, but with a different objective, identifying weaknesses, opportunities, and leverage points in a rapidly evolving situation. For decades, the United States has occupied a unique position in the global order. Its economic power, military reach, technological leadership, and cultural influence have shaped international systems in ways that few other nations could match. Because of this, any major decision made in Washington rarely stays contained within U.S. borders. Trade flows adjust, currencies react, security calculations shift, and diplomatic relationships are reassessed, sometimes overnight. The initial global reaction has been a mix of surprise and caution. Financial markets were among the first to respond. Traders, who thrive on anticipation and pattern recognition, were suddenly faced with a scenario that did not fit neatly into existing models. Volatility surged as investors rushed to interpret incomplete information. Some assets spiked, others fell sharply, and safe haven strategies re-emerged almost immediately. This reaction was not driven purely by fear, but by uncertainty, which markets often find harder to price than bad news itself. In Europe, policymakers convened emergency consultations. The tone was serious but restrained. Publicly, leaders emphasized stability and cooperation. Privately, there was clear concern about what this move could mean for long-standing alliances and economic arrangements. Europe's relationship with the United States has always been complex, defined by shared values but also competing interests. An unexpected shift from Washington forces European capitals to ask difficult questions about autonomy, dependence, and preparedness. In Asia, the response has been equally intense, though shaped by different priorities. For countries whose economies are deeply tied to global supply chains, any change in U.S. policy can have immediate consequences for manufacturing, exports, and growth. Governments are analyzing scenarios, calculating potential disruptions, and quietly preparing contingency plans. At the same time, regional powers are watching closely to see whether this move signals a broader rebalancing of U.S. attention and resources. For developing nations, the situation is even more delicate. Many rely on stable global conditions to manage debt, attract investment, and maintain social stability. Sudden shifts by major powers can strain already limited resources. Currency fluctuations, changes in aid priorities, or disruptions to trade can quickly translate into real hardships for millions of people. While these countries may have little influence over the decision itself, they often bear a disproportionate share of the consequences. Domestically, reactions within the United States are deeply divided. Supporters of the move argue that it reflects strength, decisiveness, and a willingness to break from outdated assumptions. They see it as a necessary response to a world that has changed, one in which traditional approaches no longer deliver the desired results.
Critics, however, warn that unpredictability carries risks of its own. They worry about unintended consequences, strained alliances, and long-term damage to America's credibility on the global stage. This internal debate is playing out not just in political institutions, but across media platforms, social networks, and everyday conversations. Americans are asking how this move will affect jobs, prices, security, and the country's role in the world. For many, the concern is not ideological, but practical. Will this decision make life more stable or more uncertain? Will it protect national interests or expose new vulnerabilities? Technology has amplified the impact of this moment. Information, analysis, and opinion are spreading at unprecedented speed. Within minutes of the announcement, social media platforms were flooded with reactions ranging from detailed policy breakdowns to emotional responses driven by fear or pride. This constant stream of content shapes public perception in real time, often blurring the line between verified facts and speculation. Experts are cautioning against rushing to conclusions. They emphasize that the full implications of the move will take time to unfold. Initial reactions, while important, often reflect short-term adjustments rather than long-term outcomes. History is filled with examples of decisions that seemed catastrophic at first, but ultimately led to adaptation and new forms of cooperation. It is also filled with examples where early warning signs were ignored, leading to deeper crises down the line. One of the most significant questions now facing the world is whether this move represents an isolated decision or part of a broader strategy. If it is the latter, then other changes may follow, each building on the last. This possibility is what has many observers on edge. A single move can be absorbed. A series of moves, especially if they challenge established norms, can reshape the global landscape. Security analysts are paying particularly close attention. Even decisions that are primarily economic or diplomatic can have security implications. Shifts in trade relationships can alter defense partnerships. Changes in technology policy can affect cyber capabilities and information warfare. Moves intended to protect national interests can, under certain conditions, increase the risk of miscalculation or escalation. At the same time, there is recognition that the existing global system has been under strain for years. Rising inequality, uneven development, climate pressures, and rapid technological change have exposed weaknesses that were long ignored. From this perspective, the U.S. move can be seen as a symptom of a larger transformation rather than its cause. The world may be entering a phase where flexibility and adaptation matter more than rigid adherence to past arrangements. For businesses, the challenge is navigating uncertainty without overreacting. Companies with global operations are reassessing supply chains, investment plans, and risk exposure. Some see opportunity in disruption, a chance to innovate or reposition. Others are bracing for higher costs and more complex regulatory environments. In either case, the assumption of predictable global conditions is being questioned. There is also a human dimension that statistics and policy analyses often miss. Uncertainty creates stress. It affects mental health, decision-making, and social cohesion. When people feel that major forces beyond their control are shaping their lives, frustration and anxiety can grow. Leaders who fail to acknowledge this emotional reality risk losing public trust, even if their policies are technically sound. Despite the tension, there are voices calling for calm and perspective. They remind us that the world has faced shocks before and survived them. They argue that cooperation, dialogue, and transparency remain possible even in moments of disagreement. The challenge is ensuring that short-term reactions do not harden into long-term divisions. What no one disputes is that this moment matters. The fact that no one saw this coming is precisely what gives it such power. It has disrupted expectations and forced a global reassessment. Whether that reassessment leads to conflict or cooperation, fragmentation or renewal will depend on choices made not just in Washington, but in capitals around the world. As days turn into weeks, the headlines will evolve. Some fears may ease, others may intensify. New information will clarify some aspects of the move, while raising new questions about others. What will remain is the memory of the moment when the world collectively realized that something had shifted. In that sense, this is not just a story about the United States. It is a story about interdependence, about how deeply connected modern societies have become. A single decision can echo across oceans and borders, touching lives far removed from its origin. That reality brings both risk and responsibility. The world is on edge because it understands this truth. Stability is not guaranteed, but neither is decline inevitable. The future remains open, shaped by responses as much as by actions. Whether this unexpected move becomes a source of lasting tension or a catalyst for necessary change is still undecided. What is clear is that the world is watching